Hi. I'm Ian Bernstein, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Sphero. So if you haven't heard of Sphero before, we build products like a little robot ball called Sphero, BB-8, a toy version of BB-8 from Star Wars The Force Awakens, our new Force Band, and our products are distributed in about 18,000 stores worldwide. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about storytelling. I'm going to start with a little bit of background and context on myself and the company. We're going to talk about how I learned the power of storytelling, how we're applying that to a bigger thing like our company, and maybe just some tips on how you can apply storytelling to your own companies or your own ideas. So I grew up in a very rural town in New Mexico, right in the middle of the US. I would say my family was sort of at the poverty level, and it was about an hour drive to get to really anything. When I was in fourth grade, I started homeschooling. And when I was about 11, I've been doing that for a few years, my dad, who's a classical guitarist, decided he wanted to get into digital music recording. So we went to a computer club, and he ended up meeting a guy that taught electronics. And he thought that I might be interested in electronics, so they worked out a trade where this guy, Phil, would teach me electronics in exchange for my dad teaching him guitar. So I did that, started, and loved it. Was doing that for a few months, and one day I showed up, and Phil had a poster for a robotics competition that was going to be happening in Santa Fe, New Mexico, a couple hours from where I lived. So we decided to check it out and see if it was interesting. Showed up. Turned out they had a workshop as part of the competition. I ended up building my first 3 robots, went all 4 days of the competition, and then all through middle and high school, basically all I did was build robots and sit on the internet and learn stuff. So these are a few of the robots that I built. One kind of interesting one was in the middle, when I built when I was about 14 or 15, which was a spherical robot. So after that, when I was 18, I decided I wanted to go to university to study electrical engineering. So I went to New Mexico Tech, did that again for 3.5 years, took some time off. I traveled around Mexico, and then I transferred to Colorado State to again study electrical engineering. And I was about a year away from graduating, and I went to a career fair, and I wasn't really interested in finding a job, but I was just kind of curious what was out there. So I went to all the different companies, and all the jobs just sounded really boring. And this was like maybe November of 2006. And that winter break in the US, you get a month off for winter break from university. I was kind of depressed, and I thought, well, maybe if there's not a fun job out there for me, I can just create my own job. So I decided to start a web design company. Because it was creative, I got to do the front end of the website, but also I could use my engineering skills to do the databases and all the stuff in the back end. So I started that, and I loved it so much over winter break, I decided to drop out of school a second time, and I started a web company called ACOM. At the same time, I was working part-time at a robotics company called Road Narrows Robotics, and we were doing research on humanoid robots. And I ended up doing both of those things, learning a lot for about 4 years. And one day I was at the robotics company, and I was playing with my phone, and I thought, well, this thing is an amazing computer, and it has a beautiful display, and I can do sensors and all GPS. why can't I use this as the brain for these robots we were developing? So I looked on Google, and not only did I not find people controlling robots with smartphones, but nobody was controlling anything in the physical world at the time with smartphones. And this was about November 2009. And it's weird to think now because everything connects to your phone, but really we were the first ones thinking about that. So I met my co-founder and we started prototyping. We bought a remote starter and put it in my car, and we could start the car and roll down your windows from your phone. This was like January 2010. We controlled lights and a toy tank and my garage door. And with these videos that we made of all these projects, we applied to some seed accelerator programs. We applied to Y Combinator and Techstars. And we ended up getting in as the first hardware company in the summer of 2010. So in Techstars, it was the second day of Techstars, and we were thinking of all the hundreds of ideas and things that we could create and control with our technology. And it was 3 in the morning one night, and I thought, man, we just need something simple, like something I can just throw on the table and it does something cool. And Adam, my co-founder, said, what about a marble? And then I thought back to that robot ball that I built when I was a kid, and I was like, well, what about a robot ball? And that's how Sphero was born. So Sphero was basically just a robot ball controlled from your smartphone, where we use the smartphone as the brains, and the robot can be cheaper and do interesting things. After Techstars, we did our big demo day. We raised some money through Foundry Group and Brad Feld. One of our mentors in Techstars, Paul Barbarian, became our CEO. And in January of 2011, we went to CES. So this was the first CES we went to. These were all hand-built prototypes at the time, and as a startup, you're very scrappy. So as an example, these balls didn't have the induction charging, didn't work. The shells were all hand machined and very brittle. And if you notice the little box there with the TV on it, we had our intern in there for 4 days cleaning out the inside of the shells and plugging them in, and we'd hand him one with the battery was dead, and he'd hand us back a charged one. So from that point, it took about a year to get the product out into the market. And again, this is this first version of Sphero that shipped in December 2011. And again, it was really built by engineers. It was a robotic ball controlled from a smartphone, and that's the slogan we used. And the product did well, but not amazing. And we always felt like we were missing something. Like, it was a good product, but we were just kind of missing something. And it was the end of 2013 when we launched our Sphero 2.0 that we started to understand what we were missing. And it came from Toy Fair in February 2013. And there was this kid next to our booth at Toy Fair, and he kept playing with Sphero. And at the end of the show, I gave him my Sphero that I had played with for like 100 hours. And on my flight back, I thought, well, there's something wrong with that. Like, I shouldn't be able to just give my Sphero away that I played with for 100 hours just because I can get a new one. There should be value around that unit after playing with it for that long. So I talked with the team, and we came up with a plan, and that was to add sort of a story and turn Sphero from a robot ball into a character. And it turned out that it worked. So a couple of weeks after we launched Sphero 2.0, we released a big app update that added this campaign mode, and we saw our engagement for the product go way up. So going into 2014, we knew it was working, but we knew we wanted better character and better story. And a few months later, we heard that Disney was going to be partnering with Techstars to do the Techstars Disney Accelerator. So we figured Disney would be the best people in the world to learn how to add better character to. And it turned out the first week of the program, we had a 10-minute meeting with the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, and this was a year and a half before the new Star Wars film came out. And in our meeting, we were very prepared, and we're like, hey, this is Sphero, and we were founded in 2010. And he's like, yeah, I've researched you guys. Check this out. And he pulls out his phone and starts showing us set photos from episode 7. And he gets to a picture of BB-8, and he's like, this kind of looks like your robot ball. Can you guys make this? And we're like, I don't know, maybe. So that night, we actually had all of our tools and our 3D printers and everything out in Los Angeles. So we made one. I drew the head in CAD. I 3D printed it and had magnets, and we took a video and we sent it to him that night. And Disney loved it. It was, as far as I know, the first fully working BB-8. And we went into a top secret project to get that product to market. And of course, it took about a year, and we ended up with the Sphero BB-8. So this was character plus story, and it was really a rocket ship for our company. So when you get the engineering and you add the story and you add an innovative product, and it all works together, out of all of our products, just in 2015, we sold over 1 million robots. So when you get that right and you add the right story, it really works. So we thought we kind of have this formula for product development. We started hiring more creative people and more artists, and worked with teams of not just engineers like we had done in the beginning, but we started to add these really creative people. But the company, we still didn't really have a direction for the company. What should be our next product be? Should we do a product with this idea or that idea or this idea? We really needed a direction, a vision, a North Star, so sort of more of a story around the company itself. Where is it we're going with this story? The story being our company. And something really that my co-founder and I had been thinking about since we were kids, we think science fiction is right. We think that maybe 50 years from now, every home is going to have a robot. And it's not going to be there's going to be lots of robots, but the most important one's not going to be a utility robot, but it's actually going to be a character, and it's going to be a member of your family. So a family is going to go out, and they're going to buy a home, and they're going to buy their robot. So our big vision for the company is to put a robot in every home. And of course, I think it's important that, the path you take, there's lots of different directions you can go. And when we started the company, we were engineers, we engineered a product, and then we added story, and now we have this big vision of a robot in every home, but we're, of course, still writing our story. Who knows how we'll get there, but that's our North Star. So just some things to think about when you are creating your own story. So your own story for your company or for your product. There's lots of ways to get there. I think as a founder or an inventor or a product manager, you really should have a clear vision in your head of what your North Star is. What is what is the product or company you're trying to create? And you're starting up here, but there's lots of ways to get to that path. And I think that something that happens a lot, it's something that's happened to me a lot, is you get here, and there's 4 different ways or 5 different ways that you could go. And you think about them all, and you spend weeks or months in thinking about all these different directions. But as long as the directions in your mind will somehow end up at that North Star, it's best to just pick one and go, because it really doesn't matter. In the end, you'll always end up at your North Star. But I think that's definitely something that I get hung up on. So again, come up with your North Star, make sure you have it in your head, look at all your options and just go, because, don't waste time. Something I want to clarify is your product doesn't have to be a character to have a story. So BB-8, it makes sense. It's a character. But everything can have stories, right? I mean, Steve Jobs writes stories about the iPhone. And it's really it's sort of a ride that you go on as a user, right? Your product could be some enterprise, product or a phone or whatever. But you want to think about how do you want your users to feel as they use your product, and how do you take those feelings along for a ride? Something one of our mentors in the Disney Accelerator, this guy Rob McGray, he asked us one day, he's like, what's the song of your product? What's the song of Sphero? Like, how do you want people to feel when they're playing with Sphero? And we'd already built the product, and we thought about it, and we went on Spotify, and I think what we came up with was a Beethoven symphony. It was kind of a little bit crazy and wild, but it was also kind of sophisticated. And that's sort of how we wanted people to feel when they played with the Sphero. So it's an interesting exercise, and I would encourage you guys to think about a product that you're working on, or a company you're working on, or something you're working on, or maybe it's a person, and just think about what's the song of that story. And it's best to do this before you've already built the product. But think about, put on the music and play it as you're developing it or brainstorming, because you want people to feel a certain way when they utilize your product. It's like a director is crafting a movie. It's a roller coaster of emotion. So it's happiness and sadness and frustration, and frustration seems bad in a product. You don't want your users to be too frustrated, but it can actually, in certain cases, be a good thing to have a challenge. So then when that challenge is overcome, the user has a huge spike of excitement and happiness after that they've figured this element out. So again, you don't want to make it too challenging, to be too frustrating, but that can lead to an even higher high afterwards if you do it right. So when people are viewing your website and they view an advertisement for your website, how do you want them to feel when they see that advertisement? Should they feel curious, or should they feel like, well, this is like a badass product? This is the best thing ever. And then when they click on that, how do you want them to feel? And what's sort of that ride? It's like watching a movie. How do you want people to feel as they go through your website and they finally learn more information and then go off and read reviews and then come back and subscribe? Or if it's a physical product, they buy it. And when they buy it, how is it going to come to your house? How do you want them to feel when they open the box? Is there smell associated with it? How do you stimulate all the senses of your potential your customer? And that's how you craft a story around a product. And it doesn't have to be a BB-8 character product. It can be anything. It could be a web service or a phone or whatever. So I encourage you guys to think about that and facilitate, the art and the engineering, because, we started as engineers, and when an engineer builds a product, when I build a product, it's kind of boring. And it's very practical. But also, on the other hand, when an artist builds a product, sometimes it can sound really amazing and it's really cool, but you can't actually make it. So you need to bring these two together, build an innovative product, and ask yourself, what is your story? What is your story for your product? What is your story for your company? Thank you.
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Richard Jun. I am a co-founder of BAM Ventures. We're an early stage seed fund in Los Angeles. We're in about 80 different companies. We had the benefit of knowing the Disney Techstars people very early on. So we met, Ian, his co-founder, unfortunately, we didn't invest, and it's probably one of our biggest regrets. But I am going to now moderate the Q&A and the post-speech talk with Ian. So. Ian, thank you very much. What I really liked about what you said in your presentation was the whole idea behind brand, right? You're a product company. BB-8 Sphero is a robot, but because you were able to focus in on the brand and the story behind the product, you now have a company that's worth a lot more versus just a product company, right? So when you and your co-founders thought through what the product was and what the brand was, can you walk us through that kind of progression?
I mean, definitely our brand as a company is around a lot around connected play. We're makers and hackers. We've always wanted our products to be hackable. I'm actually excited to say that today I can finally say that BB-8 is hackable and programmable, which is super cool. And that allows people to be creative around our product and build new things. So that's part of our brand.
Yeah. What I liked in your presentation was how you walked us through kind of your youth, things that have formed you as you've grown older. Mm-hmm. Is there something you can point to in your past that really kind of formed you as the entrepreneur you are today, that's kind of positioned you to be successful?
Yeah, there's probably a bunch of little things. I mean, maybe I started out as an entrepreneur like pretty young. Like some of the robots that I built, I actually built these butterflies that were solar powered, and they'd charge in the windowsill, and they'd build up charge and light, and then they'd start flapping. And I sold those to a bunch of my parents' friends. So maybe I was thinking about business quite early, but after that, it kind of disappeared until college. Until I had that moment at this career fair where everybody, just had boring jobs, and I said I would start my own company. So there's been like a few moments like that. And when this guy Rob McGray asked me, what is the song of your product? That was a huge inspiration, I think, for Adam and I, and really realizing that the emotional part of your product, because I never, I'm an engineer, right? I don't necessarily always think about people's emotions, or maybe not. I try to care about that stuff, but sometimes you don't, right? So thinking about that element, I think, was a big moment for us.
I think when we decide where to invest or who to invest in, we always like investing in engineers because they're curious, right? They see something that they want to fix, and they're committed. They have a certain amount of passion that's going to kind of drive them through all of the failures to get to a point of success. So we've been very lucky in investing in engineers, and I think part of it does go back to the theme of this conference, which is all about creativity, entrepreneurship, and as well as kind of embracing your failures and being able to kind of overcome and eventually get to a point of success where you do have a successful company like you have already. So when it comes to team dynamics, how do you and your co-founder kind of work together? Do you feel that you have to do one thing well and he has to complement you, or do you kind of do everything by committee?
I think, it's changed over time. Like our roles at the company has changed over time. Initially, it worked very well because I'd done a lot of software and I was programming. I was doing web design for a long time. But really, my strong point is actually building the hardware. And Adam has also been involved in robotics since he was a kid, but he focused more on the software side. So when we first met, it really couldn't have been a better match. Like we could technically do each other's sort of roles, but it was quite clear. Like I build the hardware, I do the firmware and the actual robot, and he handles all the APIs and the phone side of it. So it was kind of just made sense. But it worked very well because I could sort of help him out and he could help me out if we were getting stuck. But now, I would say now, I run our R&D team at Sphero, so looking at new things, new products, trying out a lot of stuff. And Adam is working on a product team to actually build the first iteration of this home robot that we've been talking about. So we still work very close.
Great. Well, I flew 14 hours here for a 10-minute Q&A. So if you could share with us one pearl of wisdom for your success, or what what in your life has really kind of determined how you've come to this point where you are a founder of a very successful company, right?
I think I was talking to somebody earlier. I think one of the things that I've had, I don't know where I came up with this rule, but I had a rule since I was a little kid, and it was never to have a job where I wasn't learning something. And that isn't always the job where you're making money. So it's been quite hard for me over the years, and until recently, until the last 5 years of my life, it was, living on credit cards and occasionally having to ask my parents for loans and things like that. But I think always having a job where I was always learning something gave me a lot of opportunities, and I've met a lot of interesting people that now have sort of come back and helped get to where I am today.
This conference is put together by some amazing accelerators here in Korea. You've had the benefit of going through one of the better programs in the US, the Disney program. Can you talk a little bit about how they've helped you to become successful?
Yeah, definitely people. For instance, the first time we went through Techstars, one of our lead mentors in the program, didn't know him before the program, joined as our CEO right after, and he's still our CEO and an amazing guy. So it's helped with people that have joined our company. It's helped with the network. Even after you go through the program, you have a huge network of other entrepreneurs and mentors that you can reach out to. And then just connections. That meeting with Bob Iger to learn about BB-8 never would have happened in a million years if we hadn't have gone through the accelerator.
Yeah.
So it can help with your product development too.
Do you feel that you would be just as successful without the Bob Iger meeting or the Disney support?
It's hard to say, right? It's it's hard to say. I think we still would have come away from the program learning a lot. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe there would have been some other meeting. I don't know.
I think we're running out of time, and I'll definitely give you some time for final thoughts. But I think, given this audience, a lot of the people here are creative. They have day jobs which they may or may not like. They're certainly considering joining a startup or starting up their companies, right? So, with that being the context, what advice would you have for our audience?
I've always been really crazy. I don't like doing things that I don't like to do. So I would just encourage you to just go for it, and somehow things work out one way or another in the end. So if you're unhappy with what you're doing, when we started Sphero, we had other ideas like door locks, and all of the venture capitalists and everybody, all the mentors we talked to, it seemed like a better idea. What if you could not, check into your hotel? You could just pull out your app, you go right to your room. Everybody liked that. And then there was this crazy robot ball idea. And we had a meeting with Brad Feld, and he's like, all right, gun to your head, which one do you pick? We're like, ball. He's like, do that. And it seemed crazy, but we did it, and it worked. So I guess my advice is just do what you're passionate about, what you think is right, even though it might not seem like the best business money idea, and it'll work out.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Any parting thoughts, or you think?
I think that's it.
Yeah. Our time's up. Thank you so much for having us.
Richard.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah.